Hello fellow creative people of the internet. In today's video I'm going to be showing you where I'm up to with the Toshiba rebrand. Let's go. So this is part 3 of this little mini series I've been working on where we're rebranding Toshiba. Make sure you've watched part 1 and part 2. I'll put links in the description below before you watch this video so you get a full scope of what we're trying to do with this project. Okay then, so I know the plan originally was for me to just create a logo this week and present you with 5 options and let you vote for them, but I thought a logo just slapped on a white background might not give a full kind of vision for the brand and how I imagine the whole brand to look. So I've made a little brand board for each option. These brand boards should give you a much better idea of how I envisage the brand sort of looking in the real world instead of, like I say, just slapping it on a white background, because it's rare, the logo is rarely going to be seen on its own like that. In last week's video, I ran a poll to see which idea you thought would work best and you thought we should develop in Illustrator to kind of take through to a final logo design. Out of the 5 options, the most voted for was the wordmark only option. So anyway, that's enough talking. Let's get into the process and show you what I've been working on. So my sketches last week showed this idea of creating a link between the final 2 letters of the word Toshiba, turning the B and the A into an infinity loop style logo or icon. I went through some different methods but found that the best method was to build the infinity loop from scratch and then replace the rounded parts of each letter with what I had built using a simple stroked line. Now that I had linked these 2 letters, I felt that the rest of the logo looked a little bit gappy and like it was a different style to the infinity letters, just where they were connected. The rest felt a little bit detached and kind of like there was too much space between it. So I decided to push the concept of connect to its extremity to see if I could create something very bespoke without looking too try-hard and unnecessary. I used quite a lot of different techniques to achieve this, and I think this video is going to end up being hours long if I explain them all, so if you have any questions just let me know in the comments. So by connecting some of the other letters in the earlier part of the word Toshiba together, I had achieved my original goal of making the rest of the letters fit with the bespoke B and A. Next, my thoughts moved towards the colour. The red and black that I was looking at initially, to me, didn't send the message of quality and prestige, so I looked into some Japanese colour theory on Google and saw that gold seemed to send the right signals, conjuring up images of the expensive metal and of course like winning medals of gold too, like a first medal is normally gold. Also, a little side note, excuse the gradient, like gold never looks great in CMYK, so I've tried to kind of imitate the reflection that a metallic gold would have by using a gradient. In production, the idea would be to use a gold Pantone colour, like maybe like 873 when printing, or alternatively, and even better, you can use like a metal foil as like a specialist print finish, like on higher budget items like brochures and stuff. In addition to the logo design, I've also created a new strapline for each logo option. My process for the strapline creation was to note down words related or connected to Toshiba, and then write some key characteristics of my logo option down, and then combine these into a strapline that sounded like it could work. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to take some of the core concepts of like what Toshiba stand for, their values, their purpose, and everything else on the website that we looked at in last week's video. And then I'm trying to think like, so in its simplest form, if the logo looks super simple, I'll like try and incorporate maybe the word simple, or not clean, but something that like indicates clean, just so it fits. So like their brand identity is kind of like actually weaved into the strapline. It's hard to explain, but hopefully you'll see what I mean as the options develop. So for option 1, I came up with around 10 straplines, but the preferred option for me was Connecting Your World, as this ties in nicely with Toshiba's current goal of combining digital and physical technologies, and it also ties in with the connected visual nature of this logo design. So yeah, that's what I meant by kind of taking key characteristics from the logo and kind of turning that into a word that then could then be combined like with a key characteristic or a key value from the company. So Connecting Your World, it gives that sort of like multi-level message. So it's like connecting the physical and digital technologies. And it also kind of, if you're like, say you've got a smart TV, in its rawest form, it's connecting you to the world, I guess, like on a consumer level. Maybe I'm waffling, but I just feel like I want to get that point across. So the next step was to build the brand board to give an indication of how the logo would look in real life situations. I feel like the idea of a black background provides strength and power that gives a premium feel, and the contrast between the dark background and the metallic gold will really help make the page look striking. So my end result is this black, white and gold colour palette combined with humanised imagery and clean typography. This should be a good starting point for a clear and concise premium technology brand identity, and this is option 1. So after option 1, which was a huge change from their current identity, I wanted option 2 to be a little bit closer to the original brand identity, but with a few key differences. I worked on developing a word mark that was uppercase and wide, similar but not the same as the current Toshiba logo. Instead of using the brightest available red, I made it a little bit deeper by adding some cyan and black into the mix. This new red feels more like the colour you would expect something more expensive to be, as it's a little more subdued and understated, which is generally easier on the eye, instead of that like solid bright RGB red that kind of you see a lot of companies using. At this stage, I was trying to incorporate some sort of secondary element which could be weaved throughout the rest of the branding. I was looking for some sort of visual element that I could build a theme around. I tried lots of variations of an arrow weaving in with the text, but after all of this development, I felt like the best idea was the first idea, with the negative space in the A showing a small upwards arrow, basically a triangle that just fits perfectly in the negative space. I decided that the black wasn't necessary in the end, so I simplified the logo to be one full colour and fully committed to our new deeper red colour. I do like a good single colour logo, as it's much easier when it comes down to situations where you have to reverse the logo for use on a dark background or use on a photo background. It's just nice and easy to make the whole thing white, and no problems with like weird colours touching and you have to kind of use different grayscale or different tones of a colour. It's just make it white, done. So developing the strapline for option 2 was a little bit of a weird one, because I didn't develop it with option 2 in mind. I developed it with like some of the other options. So at the point in the process where I was developing straplines, I actually thought I was going to leave this logo out of the options, as I wasn't a greatest fan of the style. However, after I had second thoughts and then decided to make a brand board for this option, which meant I also needed to add a strapline. I thought that change through innovation sounded quite techie, whilst the word change sounds like quite a big word that not only means changing the lives of their customers, but also kind of indicates changing for the future of the world. I know that's very big and very ridiculous, but that's just what big companies do. Their statements are like super vast and super huge and like life-changing, world-changing, and we just don't bat an eyelid at it, we're just running with it. So that led me on to the brand board, and when developing up this, I used a font called Nanito Sans for the body copy and subtitles, and also it's easily accessible for all designers who will end up working on the Toshiba brand eventually, if they rolled this out, instead of having for every design studio ever to kind of have to buy a font and end up with a different cut of the font because they bought it from a different foundry and stuff like that. It's just one central source when it's Google Fonts. It just makes life a lot easier. And even though it's a little bit of a weird thing for me to be saying, I guess that's the kind of thing you have to be thinking about when you are going to kind of rebrand a completely global, absolutely huge company. And as another nice little touch for this logo option, I developed a little pattern that I thought could be cool, as it includes the arrow from the logo. A development on this also includes including the pattern composited into pictures themselves. So in this example, I've made the wallpaper use the pattern, but the scope of this has no limits. Like just now, I just had this thought that maybe like you could always have the triangles like pointing at the logo or pointing at the product. I think that would be really cool. So if you can imagine like a billboard or something like that, and you've got this faint pattern in the background, but all of the arrows are kind of rotated so that they're pointing at the product. So just draw your eye in, just a little idea of something like how this could be developed and how it could work. So for option 3, I went back to the sketchpad and had a little look at some of the other ideas that I drew out and decided which one to pull forwards. I tried a few of the ideas, such as colouring in the negative space in the letters, which is something that I'd drawn out at the sketching stage, but I just felt like there's too much like an out-of-date trend instead of a well-considered logo design. It just felt like kind of that grungy style that I just really didn't think fitted and didn't think would be good to pursue. So in the end, the word mark for this option is just a nice, simple design with no major whiz bangs. The lowercase text definitely feels a lot less shouty and forceful than the current logo, which I could see as a positive. And the dot on the end of the logo is red as a subtle nod to the Japanese flag. But then I just said that, but then the only potential issue with this is when the logo appears on other colours, such as like if it appeared on red, for example, which is inevitably going to happen with a company of this size and sort of like advertising of this scale. So basically, as soon as it's seen on any other colour other than white, the idea is lost in translation because it's suddenly not the Japanese flag anymore. It's just a dot on a background, which is just nothing remarkable. So as this logo's design is revolving around simplicity and the lowercase text is visually softer than the other options, I thought that it would be fitting to have a strapline that makes the company feel like they're doing good for humanity, which in turn makes the customer feel like they're helping the world by buying the products. Choosing the best strapline was a little bit of a funny one because some of them sounded a little bit kind of like too dramatic, more like what you might expect from like a healthcare or like a care company instead of a technology provider. So I just was treading that line very carefully as to not go too sort of like soft and soppy or too sort of like sounding like some sort of hospital or private healthcare company. Change through innovation seemed to be the best fit out of the options that I thought of. It's nothing too overly dramatic and it seems to fit the vibe of the relaxed tone and feel and style of the logo. For the rest of the brand board, I used Futura to match in with the logo, and I just paid some attention to the hierarchy to make sure that the typography was all sound and would work in all situations. So obviously I don't want to go too deep into typography in this video. This is just kind of an overview of the brand board. What I'm trying to say is I just wanted to get a little system where I've got a nice subtitle size that could also be used as like an introduction paragraph or something like that. And then like nice sort of balance between the size of the title, the body copy and the subtitles themselves. So yeah, that's just something else that I've been working on, and you've probably noticed that in the other brand boards that you've just seen. So yeah, let's move on to option 4. Okay then, so in some of my recent videos, I've done a little test, and that's where I don't put in a section that's me going, oh, can you please press like on my video? Because I thought like it might just be getting a little bit annoying. But it seems like when I don't put that little section of video in, the videos get less likes, so I'm just going to have to do it now. I'm going to have to bring that little thing up, the little cursor will probably whiz from down here somewhere, or maybe that side, I can't remember, and it's going to click on the little button and just remind you to press like, so thanks. So there was a bit of a weird process to get to option 4, much like option 3. And option 4 actually started out with the idea that I wanted to look back at Toshiba's very, very early logo, like prior to 1984 when it started looking like it does now. And I wanted to see if there was anything that I could integrate into something more modern and high-tech. So basically just grab something from the past as a nod to their heritage, but kind of update it to kind of make it feel more modern and more like, you know, consumer friendly. And that's not to say that some of the old logos wouldn't work today, because some of them were absolute bangers, like the this one with the sharp point there and the sharp point there and like the whizzy bit in the middle. Like you could just release that tomorrow with a different word next to it and people would be like, oh, that's just like a sick new design. Like, how did you come up with that? Like, that is just some good quality timeless logos that they've got in their back catalogue. So like I said, some of the old logos were really cool, but then when I tried to include them in my word mark, it just looked like too much going on, just completely unnecessary. Trying to incorporate a icon into the text is something that I'm not the greatest fan of anyway, but I thought I'd try it. But I didn't think it was working, so therefore I decided to think less about the old logos and more about creating something new. I told you the process was a bit weird, but just sometimes how it goes. Originally, the idea of cutting into the O was to make something that symbolised global distribution. Whilst this was looking good, the fact that I had 3 stripes made me realise that it was dangerously close to one of Adidas's lesser known logos. But I don't really know much about this logo, but I just put it up on the screen there. This Adidas logo seems to still exist, or maybe has been around in the last 10 years, so I obviously didn't want to encroach on that or be confused with that. Once I realised this, I changed the plan a little bit to use 4 stripes, and I also adjusted the position of the stripes so that the lines look like they're moving upwards within the O, kind of like a positive graph. There's something psychologically more positive about that than having like a frown shape or a shape that goes down. I thought that another angle to take on this logo is the fact that the O looks like the lines on a racetrack. I know Toshiba isn't a sports brand, but because of the whole Adidas thing, that was kind of just on my mind. But then I felt like the good sportsmanship, like winning the race, kind of like at the head of their field, ahead of the curve, stuff like that, and like basically leading the pack is something that you'd say in running, like for the forefront, like the front runner of the group. So maybe it's like symbolising that Toshiba are winning the race, and like just playing to win and stuff like that. And I thought them themes coming through could be quite nice to integrate in the branding, perhaps. When it came to the strap line, I wanted something with impact. At the time, I was thinking about the racetrack theme, so I had like ready, set, go in my mind. And that led me to creating another 3-word phrase of innovate, engage, excite. And I think this feels more humanised and relatable than their current strap line of leading innovation. Just feels a little bit more sort of like, obviously it's not conversational, but the words just feel like, they're more like the kind of words that you would use when talking to your friends instead of like leading innovation, more like robotic and cold and corporate. When it came to the brand board, I wanted to place the emphasis on colour for this option. We aren't restricted, we have a wide palette of desaturated colours that we stack and combine to create varied visuals but with an underlying consistent style and theme. The font used is called Circular, and I believe that is actually the font that Spotify use, which I'm seeing as only a good thing, as I think their marketing and branding is good and their audience is everyone, which is kind of weird, but much like Toshiba. In the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that I've made a little example advert showing how we could use colours within the text and imagery. As it develops, maybe we could use different colours for different parts of the brand. I'm not sure, we'd have to develop that at the next stage. You know, I just thought of something quite funny actually, I've never really thought about before. I think the reason that I do 5 logo options like almost every single week is literally down to the fact that YouTube limits you to 5 options in the poll. So I just maxed that out, and I just don't know why that popped in my head, but it did. So anyway, option 5. I wanted to try option 1's concept again, but keep the whole thing a lot simpler and cleaner, using bold, exciting colours instead of the more traditional palette of option 1. So for this option, I'd already done the majority of the work in option 1, so I basically just simplified the first half of the text so it wasn't so connected and detailed. There was something about that connection and detail that I added on option 1. I started getting second thoughts. I started thinking, oh, maybe it looks a little bit 80s. I mean, not that it's a bad thing to look 80s, because it kind of will look established, but I just wanted for option 5 to take another route. I did adapt the font a little bit by rounding some of the sharp corners just to take the sting out of the edges so that it fitted in a little bit nicer with the infinity symbol that's obviously rounded. Strapline wise, I wanted to include the word connected as that's part of the original infinity idea. And then connected innovation seems to work considering Toshiba's current mission is combining cyber and physical technologies. So whilst developing, I was liking how the logo was looking, but the black looked a little harsh, so I wanted to change the colour palette to something a little bit softer and more friendly. After a little look at colour meanings, I settled on dark blue and a bright orange for the dot on the eye. These are complementary colours that work very well together. This blue and orange colour theme is actually a lighting technique that they use in films and cinema. So this led me to thinking that we could use like the freeform gradient tool in Illustrator to create something like cinematic. So it looks like kind of like a light leak from the top right hand side. So like that like strong orange light mixed with that sort of like dark blue and even some black in there, just to give it that like cinematic feel. Just gave it a little bit more drama and a little bit more interest than like a flat colour. So for the bottom right hand section, which has kind of become this little kind of like mini advert part of the brand board, I think a humanized approach will work well, and like using like human imagery that's a little bit imperfect and it kind of feels real. It will help to make Toshiba a more relatable and kind of like a lifestyle-esque brand. Okay then, so that is it for this week's process. I hope you like what I've built out here, and I hope you at least like one of the options. I'm going to put the little button up there, and you already know what to do. You can vote for your favourite, and basically whichever one gets the most votes, I'm going to make a little brand identity guide for. Basically, I'm not sure how deep I'm going to go into it yet, but I'm thinking like we'll go into like tone of voice, so like how they send their message. We'll look at photography, we'll look at any patterns, colours, logo use, like incorrect logo use, how they would show a sub-brand, something like that. Basically, the idea is I want to kind of make this as real-world project as possible, and I want your input, so definitely remember to vote for your favourite option, and then remember to head straight down to the comments below and let me know why that was your favourite, and also just what you think in general of the video, of the options, and yeah, just get involved in the comments. Okay then, Rebrand gang, let's see our final options.